All right. First time doing this, so let's see how it looks. Not bad, not bad. Where? This is fine. Alright. Painting some Tau crisis suits. Can't really. Put white primer down in the areas that ultimately I'm going to paint yellow. The scheme's going to be yellow and gray, so not worried about overspray because I'm going to go back and mask off all those areas and then just paint them gray. So not worried about overspray at all. So we're going to do those. And then where else do we want yellow to be? So we want it on that top stripe. And that's going to be really striking. Maybe the front leading up to the head. The head I'm going to leave. Heads I'm going to leave gray. But the front stripe would be nice. And then everything else we'll leave gray. We'll get to, maybe we'll put a little more yellow on the guns to balance it out. And this is my first stream. So if you see any issues or have any suggestions, please let me know. But batch painting, I'm batch painting 4 of these guys at the same time. It's typically how I go about. Typically how I paint, unless I'm doing like a centerpiece model or a character model. I'm just going to go through and real quick just rough in those places that I'm going to keep yellow. And then I can go back and mask. Mask those off at a later date. Or in hopefully about an hour, maybe a little less. So we're gonna prime everything that we want to paint yellow. We're gonna prime white real quick, and then we're gonna paint the yellow, and then we'll mask. We'll protect the yellow area with either liquid mask or tape or both, and then we'll go back. And paint the main body gray. And then after that, we can take the masking off and then go to brushwork. So looking at the guns, and we want to keep everything balanced. So looking at the guns, I think we make the front half of the guns yellow. I think that could be really cool. And then maybe black for the barrels, so we're not having to do too much masking, not having to do anything too crazy. So that, and then this kind of structural piece. I think we're going to leave those suppressor looking things at the end of the barrels a different color, maybe black. But I want to make sure to get behind there. This will be really nice. And that'll balance out. That'll put, so when I'm looking at, why is it buffering? Come on. What is going on? Sorry. Let's yeah, it's low latency. Maybe my connection is just kind of garbage. Yeah, well, keep going. I'll look into it. Time will tell. But when I'm doing these, and I'm thinking about right now, if we were just leaving like this, there'd be a lot of yellow in the upper half of the model, and that's thanks for letting me know. Hiccups are going to happen. We'll get used to it. Practice, practice, practice. If I were to just leave like these 3 stripes of yellow above where the head's going to be, and then this 1 stripe in the middle, the lower half of this model would just disappear, just being gray and black. So we want to add a little yellow to the bottom half of the model to balance it out, but I don't want to have to go, and this is just a practical consideration, I don't want to have to go in here and do something crazy with tape in these legs or on the feet or something. That would just be, I mean, sure, it could look cool, but it's just going to be a huge pain, and it's going to take forever. So in the issue of expediency, we can try and figure out kind of better ways to do that, or easier ways to do that. So with the gun, so the gun's going to sit, their guns sit pretty low. So that's going to give a little more weight, and it's going to add some more yellow where the legs will be more in the background. So it won't unbalance the model like it would if we just left it. And this is a rattle can primer black, which I always use on resin models. These are XV9 Hazard crisis suits with burst cannons from Forge World, or ion cannons, excuse me. And these are being painted on commission from my good friend Brian. But on resin models, I always use I use primer from just a hardware store, flat black primer. It just adheres so much better than like a Vallejo or Style & Wren's airbrush primer. Even if I'm going to go back like I am now and prime white over it, I always want to get that good adhesion with the rattle can primer, because when I am doing masking, or if I'm doing weathering with like oils or something like that, but especially for masking, if you don't have good adhesion with yeah, it's too bad Osh went out of business. I'm sure it's like the same primer as, Home Depot, or, wherever you get just kind of brand. I'm sure they didn't have their own primer manufacturer, but man, that was good stuff. Before they went out of business and I moved from California to Idaho, I bought, 16, 18 cans of Osh primer. And I've been carried them up here with me. And then I've sparingly been using them since. I still have like 8 or 9 cans left. I think there's a pretty healthy black market for them at this point, but they're mine. Nobody can have any. So I'll do the rattle can primer to get that good adhesion, and then this is Badger Style & Wren's Style & Profiling. So this is Badger Style & Wren's airbrush primer, white over the black. Even if I'm going to end up wanting the entire model to be primed white, I'll still prime it black or gray before I move on and prime it white. White primer, especially like airbrush primer, just doesn't have the same adhesion that black or gray or really any of the colored primers, like red is really good, like rust brown red from Vallejo. That's really, really good. I like Style & Wren's. Style & Wren's is good. So now that we've got, when I'm using a Badger Patriot Extreme 105 with the super detail kit, could probably use to be cleaned, but I love this brush. I had a regular Patriot 105 I've been using it for years and years and years and years. The Extreme 105 is just a little more control and just as easy to clean and maintain, but I can get even tighter control than with the Badger, just with the little dial on the front for the pressure, and then the needle is actually smaller. So versatility keeps me from having to switch out brushes, which saves me a bunch of time. So, and that is the name of the game for me. If something's going to save me time, I'm all for it. So, first up, Vallejo Model Air Yellow Ochre. This is what I'm going to use as a base coat for my yellow. This is this is my secret sauce. This is my 3-step yellow that I use for pretty much anything that I paint yellow. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if I want like a really rich, if I'm going to do a pale yellow or like a warning yellow, I'll change it up a little bit. But as far as if I want like a really, really rich yellow, like I did a bunch of Space Wolves, which I'll be doing a bunch more of, and I'm sure I'll be painting them on Twitch as well. But I did a bunch of Space Wolves, and for their yellow pad, I used this recipe. I used this recipe for Tau. If I were going to do an Imperial Fists army, I would use this recipe. So this, I'm a big fan of, trying new things. But if you find something that works, especially if it's a really difficult... Come on. Speaking of being difficult... sputtering all over the place. Okay. Especially if it's a really difficult color like yellow or white. And I know without a doubt that I can achieve what I want to achieve, then I'm not going to get cute with it. I'm going to use my tried and true yellow recipe because at this point it matches the scheme for the rest of the towel, so I'm pretty much locked in at this point. But beyond that consideration, it's a great looking yellow, and it's 3 steps plus an oil wash. Well, 4. I lied. So it's 3 airbrush colors, and then the edge highlight, and then oil wash. So you just want to get a nice even base coat. Nice even base coat. Ooh, this is... of course the brush is acting up a little bit today. Why wouldn't it? Worked fine. I filmed the second part of my Ultramarines tutorial for the Patreon, but that was all brush work, so in between lunch and picking my kid up from preschool and driving him to his childcare, I did not have the time to do a practice run, but that's fine. We'll do it live. So nice even base coat. Hopefully this thing's not fighting me all day, although we will have days, there will be days like this. Night Moogle, that is very, very true. I will absolutely be doing one of those. It's a question that comes up a lot. And one of the things that I want to do as a, I guess, do I call myself a content creator now? I guess that's what I am. This is my job now. So one of the things I want to do as a content creator is show not just like, oh, here's how to paint X, here's how to paint Y, but what happens when things go sideways, because they go sideways for everybody. So like my tutorials aren't these super polished, spend hours and hours in post-production. They're just things go wrong when you're when you're painting and the brush won't cooperate or paint won't cooperate. So one of the things that I really want to do is kind of show, okay, this is inevitable. This is going to happen. It happens to everybody. I don't care. That actually looks like pretty good fluff. I don't care how good of a painter you are, you're going to have days where your airbrush doesn't want to cooperate, or certain paint color doesn't want to cooperate. So what I want to do is show, okay, what now? What's next? What do I do when that happens? How do I deal with that? And then move on. So what I did real quick off camera, because I'm trying to kind of keep moving, is pulled the needle out and cleaned it off after shooting a bunch of water through the brush. Pulled the needle out, cleaned it off, put some more water through it, and hopefully that'll alleviate that issue. I'm just going to leave a little water in the cup, even though this yellow ochre is pretty thin. That might have been part of the problem, is that it just wasn't quite thin enough. Yes, I mix in the cup. Yes, it's not necessarily recommended, but such is life. Oh, hey, what's up, Russ? I was wondering. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love myself a well-polished painting tutorial as much as the next guy. But I definitely think there's value in showing kind of how the sausage is made. Because there isn't, I don't know, there's a lot of pressure. Oops, that definitely was not. Huh. So after I get this yellow down, I'm going to do a little bit deeper clean. Really, I think I should have done what I was going to do if I had given myself enough time. Whew. That was a little overspray, but what I was going to do if I gave myself enough time is I was going to prime those areas white and then give a good clean, because really it's the primer. Anytime you spray primer through the airbrush, you want to give it a good clean afterwards. Not necessarily like a full breakdown, but I'll definitely take the nozzle out and make sure that oh, son of a gun. So we still have a little resin in between those two. What did I do with my... So reach into my little bag of tricks here. Just a little container that I store all my kind of hobbying tools in. There's a little, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little resin left behind. Just a quick scrape. Clear that out. Ideally, I catch that, when I'm building the things, or when I prime it. Not this late in the game, but, again, can't be helped. But usually that primer will adhere pretty good and kind of gum up the works from time to time. So I'll take the nozzle off and I'll make sure the nozzle's super clean, make sure the needle's super clean, and then move on to paint, because once I'm just doing paint, then it's pretty much it's usually smooth sailing. All evidence for today to the contrary. But reach the water portion of what was in the paint cup. My chat is nuts. There it is. A little off camera with the hard tools. Thanks, Russ. Yeah, that thing it's quite a big container, but I'll show. I think it's for like pens, maybe. Drawing pens, drawing pencils. So I use it. Let me switch over to OBS and see if that's better. There we go. So I use it for all of my, so it's just got a little clasp, and I use it for all my little hobby tools. I got some pinning things. These are great. You guys will see these in a minute when I clean out the nozzle on the airbrush. But just different clippers, X-Acto blades, X-Acto knives, pin vise, tweezers. I do have the GW mold line remover tool, which actually really comes in handy. Usually I use the back of an X-Acto knife, but got some drill bits in here. So just all that kind of stuff just all goes in this one little tray that I can lock, because I don't want these just dump everywhere. And then I keep that off to the side, and you know, if I'm doing assembly, I'll just pull it out, or like I just did, if I run into something, it's just right there on hand. On the rare times that I take the hobby on the road, then that's really helpful. Then I'll have to try and figure out how to transport all that stuff. So we have that yellow ochre down, and it looks like it's spraying pretty well. So I might just roll the dice. Oh. Yeah, I'm still. Well, I turn this a little bit that way, and then that. There we go. That's a little better. Is that looking so white? Hang on a second. Don't recommend that. This is so pale. Hold on 1 second here. See if we can get a little more. True tone to this, because that is just coming up really, really pale. It's more yellow than that. That is a lot closer to the true color of that yellow. This has been a constant struggle for me with streaming and. Hey, what's up, Josh? Google Hangout type sessions. Josh, you're just the guy I wanted to talk to. But yeah, it's been a struggle for me to try and figure out what doing like tutorials or doing streaming, kind of contrast, saturation, which background to use, how those colors end up looking on film versus how they are in person. Because obviously color is a huge part of what we're doing here. So that's almost too gold, but I'll mess with it between this session and the next and try and figure out exactly where I want that to be, because if we shift that, that's actually not bad. That's way closer. Okay, up the brightness a little bit so we can still see. Sorry for doing this all on the fly, but that is way closer to the true color than it was. So we'll just keep going with there. And then a little less saturated. There we go. Okay, I'm happy. Let me get back to painting. And the big reveal, this is my secret sauce for yellow, is Burned Flesh from Vallejo Game Air. This is the coolest shade, shadow color for orange. It's just insane how how well this works. I can't really explain it. It's just, if you can see there, it's kind of this orangish brown kind of. Yeah, well, sorry, I'm geeking out right now on this. But I really want this to show accurately, or at least as accurately as I can while I'm messing with it. And then we can go up from there. That's a lot closer. So it looks orange, but there's like a desaturated kind of brown to it, which is perfect for this yellow. So we want to do that on the bottom kind of 2/3, because we're going to have a nice crisp edge highlight right there on that front. But you can already see we're starting to get a good tone. So when I go back I'm going to come in with a golden yellow. So there you can see starting to get those shadows, and that looks really good so far. I'm going to come back in with a golden yellow, and I'm going to glaze the whole thing. So we want these shadows. They look a little strong right now, but we want them to be strong. We want those shadows to be significant. Because when we glaze it, it's going to tone them down a little bit, and it's going to integrate them a little bit. So we want to have a strong start to those shadows. And we're really only doing like the back third of that stripe on the head. So bottom third, back third, back third, back third. There we go. And number 4. And this is the same, like I said, this is the same yellow I did for Crisis Suit, Space Wolves, doing Imperial Fist. This is a great yellow. It's just, I love it. Really easy. So when we're doing these guns, overall, they're going to be pretty yellow, but I do want to get kind of the bottom. So I'm just going to flip them upside down and at an angle. So we have a little bit, you can see on that back portion. The front, this kind of housing, this piece, you can see there's the barrel there, and then the barrel is going to be the majority. So it's really just this part here and this front little clip here. That's too small for us to worry about. I'm not going to worry about that. But I did get some of that burnt flesh under the rivets there, so that'll be helpful. But so I want to spray it at an angle, but really the most important thing is just to get it on the back of that back housing there. That'll give some nice shadow without having to really lose our minds over whether or not we can shade, this thing 2 millimeters wide. Ain't nobody got time for that. At least not for what we're doing. Not for what we're doing here. Where we're, we want a good looking army, but we don't need to lose our minds over it. It's still going to look really good. And those the highlights are going to help even more. Then highlights are going to help more than doing like even more shading. It's going to. So again, just make sure you get. Oh wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So that's way closer. There we go. Now we finally got some good color representation there. Again, And just moving through. And we don't need to be too fine with this. Again, we want to make sure that we get it, of course, where we want it. But if we end up doing a little bit too much shade or too much overspray we're definitely not worrying about, because we're going to mask all this off. And then the base coat for the second color for the armor is a really, really dark gray. If there's somewhere that's ended up, practically white, then we can go back and we can, just hit it with a little black primer if we need to. But other than that, we're just going to spray it dark gray. And that'll take care of that. Take care of the white overspray, the yellow overspray, especially on the gun. The barrels of the gun and the front of the gun we're going to paint black. So we'll just have to make sure to be super careful when we do that with a brush. Because obviously if you hit that yellow airbrushed area with black, it's going to be a lot harder to fix. So, which I'm sure will happen at some point in time. I will hit the yellow with the black. It's also an inevitability. So when that happens, I'll just have to go back and fix that. So we are going to going with the main color, Vallejo Game Air Gold Yellow. This is super, super rich, very vibrant. I love this color. This is one of my favorites. I've never done an Imperial Fist army, but how much I enjoy painting this yellow has me tempted. But I'll be doing Emperor Spears when the time comes. So you can see that we went over the shadow, and then we really want to get good saturation on the front, and that is a strong yellow. So you can see here it's a little, that's a pretty good yellow, but it's a little paler. So we lay in that gold yellow, and it just gets that beautiful richness. I love it. I could do this. I could almost do this for a living. So again, and we are hitting that shadow. We do want to glaze in that shadow. And we're completely covering the mid-tone, which is unusual. But because yellow is such a transparent color, that's fine. It's going to be all about that transition between the very golden yellow at the top and that burned flesh at the back. It's all about that transition, and then a nice sharp edge highlight. And the oil wash will take care of the pin washing in those crevices and those details. So we don't have to worry about that. But that is a pretty saucy looking yellow. You can see that. There it is. That is a really nice yellow. Love this yellow. I'm actually really proud of this scheme that I came up with for my friend Brian. He had painted his Tau army, and unfortunately, I think part of it got stolen from a car out of the back of the car in San Francisco a few years ago. And so he was looking to get his army kind of back up to speed quickly. So he commissioned me to paint a bunch of his towels. So he already had a gray. He already had a gray and yellow scheme. So I just kind of, but he didn't really have a color recipe. So here we can see we glazed the whole gun, but because this golden yellow is really transparent, you can still see that really nice shadow. There we go. You can still see that really nice shadow that goes all the way up to just pure golden yellow on the top. And it makes for a really rich color. And if you've noticed, I'm just kind of hosing these down. Like, this is not one of the things I want to talk about too is, this is not all precision work at 8 psi. Like, this is, there is definitely space for just grip it and rip it and get some paint on the model, because we all have stuff to do. We all have projects that ultimately it's about finishing the project. It's about getting this unit on the table. I'd like to get this unit finished in, I don't know, 12 hours, maybe. Hopefully less. Less would be nice. But it's going to take as long as it takes. But again, like, we don't have to spend all day, at 8 psi, really getting in there and trying to figure out how to highlight each, vein independently. It's just not practical. So what we're going to do instead is just know our paint, know what we can get away with, know what we can't get away with, and then when it comes time, just grip it and rip it and spray some paint. So now that those are done, we're going to let those look pretty dry. So those are, those are definitely dry. I love that yellow. So what we're going to do, excuse me, is we're going to start masking. And this is an altogether another ball of wax that we have to go over, but that's why we're here, is to go over stuff like that. So let me reach into my bag of tricks here and try to find where I put my tape. I think it's in this bag of tricks. There we go. So on the other side of the spectrum from my little organized toolbox is this bag of junk, box of junk. Sandpaper, glue, I've got like pinning wire, agitators, and voila, Tamiya tape. And extra, oh sweet, extra airbrush needles, which are always in demand. But it's organized. Within that box, it's organized. So I use Tamiya tape. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it's obnoxious to spend like $6 on a roll of hobby tape. But there really isn't a product that works as consistently for me, in my opinion. This stuff is just fantastic. And it's too heartbreaking when masking tape doesn't work. It's just way too heartbreaking to deal with. So I just spend the extra money. And I really don't go through that much of it. I mean, unless I'm doing like big vehicles or something. When I'm doing vehicles, I end up going through quite a bit. But again, in comparison to, just the initial cost of the model and then how much time you're spending, if you want to get the result that you're shooting for, you want to spend you want to spend a little extra time. So I'm putting this on the paper to reduce the tackiness. So it's not going to stick to the paper, it's not going to rip the paper, but it's going to take just a little bit of that glue off the back of the tape and make it less adhesive, which is what we want. We want it to be tacky enough that it sticks, but we don't want it to like pull when we pull it up after we're done our masking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm trying to think. So I'm looking at this and I'm trying to think if I have to do tape or if I can maybe get away with some liquid mask on some of this. I think I'm just going to go with tape. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to try and figure out about how long that is. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to do a ton of trimming on the model. So we're going to say it's about that long and very lightly kind of score it. 2, I only need 4 of these. 3 and 4. So the more time that I spend near a model with an X-Acto blade, the more opportunities that I have to just absolutely ruin that model. So again, get a little of that tackiness off. And then for this, we're going to want to be pretty precise, because this is going to, this and the gray on the panel next to it and the panel underneath it, this is really going to stand out. This will be a focal point of the model. So we really want to be precise with that right there. So that looks good. Make sure there are no air bubbles in the area you want to keep. And then if you push down on it, so we're not folding it over, but we're definitely getting a guideline for the X-Acto. Because if I just push this in and haul off and just pull, I'm going to end up either gouging the model or getting, let's get that up a little bit. There we go. That's better. Or I'm going to end up getting, scraping paint off, scraping primer off. And you want to make sure that this blade is really, we're actually going to switch this out. Blades are cheap. It's not worth hanging on to, like, well, I guess it's probably maybe sharp enough. No. For this, we want to make sure, because we don't want a dull blade pulling on the tape. So the best way that I found to do this, we get that guideline just by pushing on the sides like that, and then we're going to go in maybe halfway down and very slowly cut, and we're going to turn it and down the other side. And if we lose that guideline, just kind of push it down a little bit, very slowly. And I am not pushing hard at all. I'm not pulling the blade along the model at all. I'm just cutting the tape. So we should be able to just pull that off like that. Now, you can see that's not as clean as I would have liked, but because this blade is so sharp, we can go in a little bit, but we don't want to try and get too cute with it, because we will end up really making a mistake. If we have to, just remember that this is going to get a nice edge highlight from the yellow as well. So is it perfect? So it's perfect on this side because that's the factory edge basically. This side looks a little naffed, but we can go back. But if you look at it kind of from the side there, that's not actually too bad. That we can cover with, that we can negate with the with the oil wash. Or no, excuse me, with the edge highlight. So then we have this piece left over. That's the other half of. And this one we don't have to be quite as fine because the gray, because it's just a flat area. And the gray is going to be, there's a natural break point. So this one we don't have to be as obsessive, but it's good practice. So again here, and then you want to start in the middle because it just has less chance to pull. If I try to get a good start on the very outside of the tape, it'll really, the tape can bend, the tape can, you know, you can end up just gouging the side of the model, which obviously you don't want to do. So for this, a little bit at the, a little bit at the end there. And because I have a nice sharp blade, that's, all things are possible. So there we have those two masked off, and then we're going to do the same. We're going to do the same here. On the back end of this. In the back I'm even less concerned about because that's getting that really strong dark gray. So if I do make a mistake or if the tape is running a little long, that's super easy for me to just go back and define with a brush. The outside edge especially is really important because that's going to get that airbrush fade. So that I want to keep super clean, but like the front here. But again, that's getting a nice edge highlight. So when you're doing masking like this or any kind of precision work like that, and you're trying to figure out like just how precise do I have to be, it's good to know what's going to be there in the future or what it's going to be covering up in the future. So like I was talking about with the back, and what I'm doing now, I'm just cutting this in half because I have a lot more. I have those 4 pieces for the center on the top, but I have a lot more pieces that are going to need a little narrower strip of this tape. So one of those being this middle portion here, and this is a funky shape. This is a very irregular shape. So we're not going to get a clean edge. So we're going to have to trim around both sides of that. So just make sure to push it down a little bit, get that good guide, and then that's nice. Again, go in, and then pull towards, go in. It started to fold over there, so pull it up a little bit, and then perfect. That is pretty good. Trim it a little bit. There we go. And do the same on the other side. As you see, it's a little tricky when you start getting around some of these curves, and it was a little tricky. But really, isn't this whole endeavor pretty tricky? This whole painting deal. And that's just takes a minute to. I do not want to mess with this too much. It is fraught with danger. And it also, like, you know, we do all this masking and stuff to save time. If I spend an hour and a half working on this tape on every, you know, how much time is it really saving? So, you know, I have to pick your battles with the masking. So that's one done, and then we're going to move through these other three. This was a tutorial. I just have a nice seamless transition for you, but since we're doing this on Twitch, you guys get to see the whole batch painting experience. But so when I'm doing masking, you can see I have that really nice edge on the side here, that factory edge, but then I also have a nice edge on the front. So if I can get two out of 4 edges can be that don't require any trimming, that's ideal. You definitely want to limit, in the interest of batch painting, in the interest of time, you want to limit just how much time you're spending on each element. I'm always looking for ways to get more efficient. And that ultimately helps me. I mean, it helps me get more painted, but it also helps me think through the next step. What's after this? What's the next step after that? What's this going to look like? What kind of highlights am I going to do on this? Where am I going to place those shadows? So I'm thinking of all those things while I'm trimming this up, while I'm spending a lot of time looking at kind of the shape of these panels. I've painted enough tau to this point that I already have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do when I sit down to paint tau. The battle suits, at least. I recently finished doing some Pathfinders. They still need basing, but I don't know if I posted those. Pathfinders themselves are done, and I had the hardest time trying to figure out what I was going to do for them, because like the Fire Warriors all had kind of gray armor plates with the kind of black undersuit and a yellow helmet, which ended up looking really good. But there aren't a ton of options when it comes to, you know, an army like Tau. You really want everything to blend and look like kind of off the factory line, off the production line. Because, you know, they seem very homogenous when it comes to their war gear versus, you know, if you're doing Imperial Guard Army or, you know, Adeptus Mechanicus or something like that, where it's much more individualistic. So I didn't want to do the same scheme as the Fire Warriors, because obviously you want the units to be distinguishable. So I ended up, and these guys are going on green bases, very verdant green. If you check out my YouTube, or not YouTube, excuse me, I don't have anything on there yet, but if you check out my, Instagram, Facebook, Legalized Mischief on both, you'll see pictures of the Tau army. So they're all these very verdant green bases, and I'll be doing a tutorial on how to paint those for the Patreon, hopefully in the next couple days. he wanted, when Brian commissioned me to paint the army, he said he wanted the basing to reflect a world that Tau would actually want to colonize versus all these wasteland theme bases. So that was pretty cool. So there's like flowers and stuff on the base, which is fun. That lets me play with flower tufts, which we don't often get to do in the grim dark of the 41st millennium. So actually, I'm gonna go. So what I end up doing, I'll grab those real quick. So what I ended up doing for the Pathfinders is I ended up painting their robes this kind of green to go with the basing. So they kind of blend in. Same with the drones. The drones got the same green treatment. This would be an awesome green to do for like an Astra Militarum army or something. It's so cool. They're from AK. They make these really natural, really great natural tones. But so the gray will incorporate them into the rest of the army. But I wanted to keep them kind of stealthy and, give an homage to their stealthiness. So I went with the green undertone with just the gray. There's no yellow on them at all. And I think they turned out really well. I'm super happy with them. I love this drone. I think it's going to look really cool with the rest of the army, and it'll definitely stand out as a unit. Because, like I said, the rest of the army is very, very homogeneous, very homogeneous when it comes to black, yellow, gray, black, yellow, gray. So it's nice when you can find opportunities. It's nice when you can find opportunities to have a unit set apart like that. Because even like the Cadre Fireblades and stuff, those, they have yellow robes or gray robes or overall, Tau's just a very homogenous army. It's actually one of the things that I think is so visually striking about them in its own way is just how. Sorry, my phone was just going crazy, but sure I can wait. One of the things I really like about Tau visually is just how striking. If you do a really bold scheme like this yellow and gray, and then I don't think we're going to do any of it on these, but like the Riptides and Commanders and stuff, they have this like turquoise OSL that just looks super vibrant against the battle suits. So if you just repeat over and over and over and over again, that kind of core visual image, I think it just ends up being just really, really, really striking when you look at it as a whole. So, and I know this is a little tedious, but please bear with me. I have a trick for the guns that I want to show you that will make this whole thing much, much faster. So we're not going to tape off I'm not going to do the same level. I'll show you when we get there, but I'm not going to do the same level of masking when it comes to the guns because we do have some wiggle room on those with the masking, so that enables us to do some other tricks. Again, all in the name of efficiency. There we go. Perfect. So a little hiccup, but nothing that we're going to worry about. Let's try and get that tape off my fingers. Let's see. Google Hangouts. I don't know, Josh. I'd do a Google Hangout with you, buddy. But as far as a regular, I don't know. I wonder if that'd be a way to do Patreon only kind of hobby hangouts. I'm not sure. That's a good question. You should send me. You should give me a call or send me a message and talk about how to use that. Like I'm open. I am open to suggestions. Just getting started at this, and I did some research. I did look into things that I thought would be good or I thought would work. But by all means, it's not a end all be all as far as what tools I'm using and what platforms I'm using and how I'm using them. I'm just getting started. I just launched my Patreon on Sunday. I've been really, really humbled and encouraged by the response to the Patreon so far. It's been phenomenal. So thank you to everyone who has pledged on the Patreon. If you want to go check it out, it is live. There's a link below the stream. So please go check that out if you want. It's very reasonable. Full access for $6 a month, like a large frappuccino. And I'll be posting a lot of content. So I think it's good value. Check it out. But this is my first, like I said, it's my first time streaming. It's my first week streaming on Twitch. So I'm open to suggestions. More than happy to talk about it. And I don't have the next tool I need. So give me 1 second. Be better prepared next time too. Give me 1 second. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Had to go to the kitchen, get two things. Coffee, nectar of life, which there is never enough coffee, and my very super secret, or not so secret, method for masking. Boom. Saran wrap. This stuff saves me countless hours of taping. This is one of the best tools in the arsenal when it comes to masking. It's just brilliant, especially when doing something like the guns. So we're just gonna take out a pretty thin strip, and then we're gonna tear this. So we're gonna look. The gun is about that long. So we're gonna tear this. This is not precision work here. So tear it into strips. That might be a little too thin, but yeah, maybe we get two out of that one. There we go. So tear it in strips, and then we're gonna dig into my box of tricks again. We're gonna get the little bit wider Tamiya tape to mask that off. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay. So what we're going to do with the saran wrap, and this is because we have, because we have so much room, and there isn't a clean, like that little area. Oh, see a little, I don't know if you can see that in there, but in there is a little bit more of that flashing. I did not clean these guys well enough, clearly. So you can see right there a little bit of flashing. Let's take the end of the knife, and this stuff is super thin. So boom, done. Clean that up. That's fine. So on this, we don't need a super sharp line when we're masking because these are going to be black. And black is like my safety blanket color. When in doubt, I paint it black. If it fits the scheme and the application, but when in doubt, I just paint it black. So these barrels, I'm going to paint black, and that's going to continue. That's going to continue all the way through, and probably to the end. Probably paint these things black too, but because these are going to be black, we don't need a super hard, clean line at the end of this little housing here. We don't need a clean line between that housing and those, or those and this big main body of the gun that we're going to this main body of the gun that we're going to be painting gray. So what we can do, so that gives us a little more freedom. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap, but we still don't want overspray, right? Overspray is bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the end of the gun in saran wrap to protect it. And then since we're done doing all the kind of precision masking on the suits, I want to reuse that. And we want to, of course, we want to make sure that we cover that housing there, but we're not going to be too bothered. And then pinch it so that gray doesn't get behind there. And we're masked. We're done. Took 2 seconds. So if I were to try and go through and do that all with, little pieces of tape, or even just one big piece of tape, it would work. Like if I took this really wide Tamiya tape that I just pulled out and just ran ran it up one side and down the other, and then pinched the top and bottom. I don't know if it would take that much longer, but I know that it would take more tape. And like I said at the beginning, you know, to me a tape is not cheap, and so I definitely don't want to just, you know, throw it around willy-nilly. But I do want, but it doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't tear paint off when I take it off, so that is worth its weight in gold to me. There are fewer worse feelings in this hobby than when you've taken the time to mask everything off and you know, lay down your next layer of paint and it's looking really good and you're super happy, and then, you know, it comes time for that peel, which is, when done right, is super satisfying. When you peel off that masking and you see, you know, kind of the fruits of your labor. But man, when you go to peel off that masking and it rips off the paint, and there's an underlying like primer or, God forbid, bare resin just sitting there. Oh, having flashbacks. One of my highlights, probably the greatest masking job I've ever done. I painted a bunch of Custodes tanks. I think I did 2 Caladius, 3 Coronis Grav carriers, which might be my favorite model in 40K. Those things are so sweet. They're so fun to paint. I should do that. I should get another one of those. But I painted, I think, 2 Caladius, 3 Coronis, and 3 of the little Palace Grav attack speeders all at once, batch painting. And so when you do like the red on the front on the nacelles, you paint the red and then you have to mask all that off and then paint the gold. And I masked it. I definitely took my time, and I definitely masked it in a way that, you know, the whole time I'm painting the gold, I'm like, God, I hope this red survives. God, I hope this red survives. And then when it came time to peel it off, I didn't have to do any touch up. I didn't lose a single panel of red to fouling. And so that was really a crowning achievement in masking for me. I definitely was super relieved when that happened. But I did a combination of tape and then liquid mask, which I will be using, you know, here and there. I'm sure I'll go over it at some point. Won't be using it on this project because there really just isn't an application for it. But I think on the next one, I might do some Space Wolves next. I might do Sanguinius. I have a Sanguinius that I need to paint. I have some Ultramarines Rhinos that I have to paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One too many. So I don't know if I'm. So painting the Space Wolves, I definitely do. I use. There might come an occasion to use some liquid mask. Painting the Rhinos, or the Razorbacks rather. There'll probably be some occasion. Sanguinius maybe. Sanguinius is basically going to be like airbrushing a bunch of gold and then just a ton of brushwork. But that's really how all those Horus Heresy Primarch models go. It's a lot of brushwork, a lot of detail work, but man, those guys are incredible models to paint. I can't wait to see what Primark is next. I'm really, 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 really hoping it's the Con. And I'm hoping they give him an awesome bike because I want to paint that. I actually have a friend of mine, Eric, from Variance Hammer, if you're familiar with that website. He wants me to paint the Con for him. So we're both just kind of waiting with bated breath for Forge World to release that model. It could be, later this year. It could be 5 years from now. That's just the way things go with Forge World these days. So just part and parcel, one of the, it's just become kind of part of the hobby. The nice thing is, though, that when they do release those big centerpiece models like that, they are usually phenomenal. And Sanguinius is no exception. I've got the whole diorama base and everything. He's in the process of being assembled in sub-assemblies. So he'll be on the docket the next probably week or two. My goal is to get these Tau finished this week, get some more tutorials filmed up for the Patreon this week, and just paint. The Space Wolves commission is ongoing. It's long, so that one's going to feature quite a bit. But I also have some really, really cool smaller projects that I can knock out, like Sanguinius, some Thousand Suns stuff I need to do. So I'm trying to keep it varied content going forward. So that's the goal. I don't want you guys to show up and drop in and be like, oh, he's painting Space Wolves again. Great. Tune out. So right now I didn't mount these heads, so I'm going to show the helmets rather. So before I get going on the base coat, I'm going to show how I do that for ease of painting. Go into my closet of shame here and grab a couple bases. One base will be fine. And I'm going to need, so I have my base, move this stuff out of the way here real quick. So what I'm talking about is I have 4 helmets here that need paint, but I don't, these things are a little fiddly, so I don't really want to try and hold them like that while painting them and then drop them. And so what I'll do is I'll mount them on a base, and that will allow me to just hold the base and then paint the heads, and then I can just break them off. So I need my pin vise, I need my less good clippers. My good clippers are Tamiya, and my friend Austin turned me on to these. These are Tamiya little nippers for plastic. These things are awesome. I love those. Great for cutting off sprue and not getting those big gates. So I need those, and my little box of horrors down here. So there's a lot of, I know Army Painter sells pinning kits. I think it's Army Painter. I use beading wire from Michael's or any craft store. And this stuff is $5 or $6 a spool, I think. And a spool of this stuff will last me 2 years. And I pin every model that I paint to its base. So this stuff will last literally years. It's 10 yards, 9.1 meters worth of wire. And it's great for pinning. It doesn't have to be super strong. Now, that being said, if I'm doing all also for my friend Eric, I have a Warhound Titan to assemble for him, which I'll probably be doing on Twitch as well because that'll be awesome. I would use something a little stronger than beating wire to do a Warhound Titan. So we are not using beating wire. So for that you're going to use bigger gauge wire and stuff for those joints. But so what I want to do here is I'm going to drill 4 holes in this, and I want to space them out. I want to space them out enough that while I'm painting one, I'm not getting overspray onto the other helmet. I really want there to be enough room, and then I'm not pinning these to the model. So I don't need this hole to be shallow. I don't want this hole to be... I don't want this hole to be really deep because I'm not pinning it. And I want to be able to just take this off when I'm done painting it. I want it to just come off. I don't want it to be a struggle. I don't want it to be really adhered to the pin. I just want it to hold there long enough for me to paint the thing and then take it off. So just a very shallow hole. And ideally, while I'm painting this, I won't be touching these. So they don't have to be very durable. I'll just be touching the base. Ideally, I have, sausage finger moments like everybody and knock stuff off or, yeah, Russ, that's going to be a project. Thankfully, I have assembled a Warhound before. I did one. I painted a Warhound earlier this year in this really cool blue metallic scheme. First Titan, and that was awesome. That was a really, really cool project. I was really proud of that one. That's definitely kind of one of those feather in the cap projects. That and a couple years ago, I did a Mastodon, and that's right up there with my favorite models in 40K. I'm absolutely going to do another one of those at some point because those things are bananas. They're enormous. They're just so fun to paint. But a bear to assemble. I'd rather assemble a Warhound Titan before I assemble another Mastodon. But that being said, I'd still rather assemble another Mastodon before I assemble another Fire Raptor. So, you win some, you lose some in this hobby. But so I have done it before, so that gives me some confidence. And then, but he wants it to be in like a running, like a very kind of biomechanically accurate running pose, I guess you could say, like how a Tyrannosaurus Rex would run. Yeah, Fire Raptors, man. That me and my buddy Brian became closer after we both assembled some Fire Raptors, and I think I've done 2, and I would like it to stay at that number, which is too bad because they're really cool. They're a really cool plane. They are fun to paint. So, I like doing those big projects, but like assembling them can just kick rocks. I mean, they're a special kind of awful. Every time, I think both Fire Raptors that I've assembled when you get the side of the nacelle or the side of the hull, and there's the hole for the turrets, I've snapped the hull in half on either side of that hole because it's so thin, and those pieces are always like twisted in half. And then while straightening them out, I just snapped them, and so now I have like two different pieces. It's just, but I digress. So he wants this like really biomechanical, like how a T-Rex runs, like where one foot lands in front of the other, in theory, because obviously you haven't seen a Tyrannosaurus Rex run, but biomechanically, that's how, like an ostrich kind of would run. Not really wide-footed, but so that'll be a challenge. He's going to paint that one. I'm just going to build it for him. So I get to break out the actual like power tools and a little bit thicker in the 2-part epoxy and really go to town. It's fun. It's definitely an advantage that I've done it before. So you can see the black on black. So you can see that we just mounted the heads on stakes, sacrificial towel. But that just keeps me from dropping them or sausage fingering them, getting fingerprints in the paint and stuff. So I usually do that. Well, one, I usually do it ahead of time, but two, I usually do that for any kind of head or helmet that I'm keeping separate while I'm painting. I'll go through and mount them separately. It's a little extra time on the front end, but it saves a ton of time on the back end. I definitely don't want to be going through and masking all that craziness. So that's definitely the way to go. And if you'll notice, a lot of my techniques, a lot of stuff that I'm talking about is about saving time and efficiency. That's something that I'm always striving for, is just to get more efficient. You want to spend, I don't want to rush just for rushing's sake, but we're about finishing models. Get them on the table, get them looking good, get them on the table, spending time where we need to spend the time, where we want to spend the time, but not getting lost in the procedure just for the sake of procedure. If there are easier, more efficient ways to do something, I want to try and figure it out, and I want to try and get the same result, or as close to a good result as I can get in a reasonable amount of time. Like if I can get something done in 25 minutes and have it look pretty darn good versus it would take me 2 hours to get it to look really good, most of the time I'm going to do the 20-minute thing and have it look pretty damn good, and I'm going to move on. Of course, here and there, we'll do the thing that we want to look really good. But in general, when we're painting, troops, or we're painting 6 of something, in general, we're always looking for ways. We're always looking for ways to get more efficient. Ooh, I'm gonna have to get a new one of these at some point. This color is the base color for the armor, and I am obsessed with this color and really this range of paint. one of the things that will become kind of readily apparent as time goes on. I don't use a ton of GW paint. So, part of that is just learning new paints and learning new companies that maybe people never heard of. But for me, I was spoiled where I lived in California. We had 4 or 5 local game stores that they were run by a really good hobbyist who was managing them. So they had all these different paint ranges, and I don't love mixing paint. I don't want to base like an army on a mixed paint scheme. Like, it's 3 parts, Sotek blue and 3 parts, or Sotek green and 3 parts Cabalite green and 1 part, white, and that's the base coat for my army. Well, that's great, and it might be a great color, but if you want to add to that, or if you want to paint unit after unit after unit after unit, you have to make sure that mix is right every time. And I just don't. I like consistency, so I explore. For me, it's really all about, is this the color that I want? And if it's the color that I want, then I'll use that paint, and I try to use it just straight out of the bottle. But so this is AK Interactive. This is their AK figure line. They have a few more lines. These were launched, I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, or at least when I came into awareness of them was a few years ago. And these I am obsessed with. If I were a millionaire, I would have every single one of AK's, well, products in general, but every single one of their paints, because these things are amazing. They do more military modeling, so they're more marketed for military modelers. So like this color is medium gray, but it's called German gray uniform. What it is it's a really nice bluish gray, but it's a little different than like Fenrisian gray, not Fenrisian gray, but like rust gray, which we're going to use for our highlighter, Administratum gray or something like that from GW. It's just a different tone. It's a different tone than, I'm sure there's a Vallejo model color out there, but I love AK paints. And one of the things I love about them is they go on super matte, and which is really great when we're doing, like, this is the base color, so it's going to be in the shadows, and that's perfect for a really matte paint. With the Monument, did I mess with the Monument paints yet? Monument, are those, let's see, I have like 4 paint racks with like 100, I don't know, last count was like something like 400 paints. I think so. Oh, the Creature Caster ones. I know I have one around here somewhere. I think I have a few. I haven't run them through their paces yet. I liked them so much I can't find them. Nope, I don't know where they are. They might be in a box somewhere. Those are the ones, they have like the really tall nozzle on them, right? I'll have to give those a shot, but I haven't used them. Yet. So this is that medium gray, the German uniform, and this we're going to do. Ooh, that's a little chunky. There we go. There we go. So this we're just doing an overall base coat. And these are not airbrush ready out of the pot. These are thick. Some of these are almost like toothpaste. I mean, these things are can really pose some issues. I'm just using water right now, but typically, if I were doing something other than a base coat with this, I would use AK Zone foam thinner for this. You can see how dark that is. It's a really dark kind of blue-gray. Josh, they're about the same. The scale 75. Josh is asking if the scale 75 is if these are as matte as the scale 75. They're two different lines of scale 75. One is the scale color, and then the other one is the fantasy and games, which is, whoops, that's scale color too. And the other one is the fantasy and games. The fantasy and games is pretty satin. The scale color is super, super matte. They're about the same. The AK is really matte. I mean, this stuff is like this is where light goes to die. Is on this stuff. You can see on that outer helmet. That's just flat as flat gets. I love it. And Josh knows my affinity for scale 75 as well. I'm a huge fan of their paints. I haven't got the they did another round of their Inkintensity. They did another kind of set of Inktense colors. They which I really want to get, and then they did a fluorescent line, which I am absolutely dying to get my hands on, because that's really my jam. If I can get more obnoxious and vibrant, I'm gonna find out how. Those are on the short list. The scale 75 fluoro fluorescent range. Those are on the short list of things I want to get, and then Chimera Colors. No, it was Hera Models. Hera Models came out with fluorescent pigments, and that you can mix into regular like magenta. Like they have a fluorescent magenta pigment that I can mix into my magenta. Oh, I can't wait. I really someday soon. I hope I'll get. Ooh, this is. There we go. So it's a little chunky, but we just had to power through it. And again, if this were a highlight layer, I would pull this airbrush apart and try and figure out what the heck is going on here. But because we're just laying down a nice even base coat, the fact that this thing is sputtering and sounds like it's on life support, I'm not worried about it. As long as it's not, because it's still giving me enough control. It's still giving me enough control to where I'm not like flooding this model with paint. I'm still getting a nice even base coat. If I were trying to do a highlight though, this would be spattering everywhere, and it would look like absolute hell. So before I move on to the highlight layer, I have to take this thing apart and figure out what's going on, because I can't spray. I just can't continue like this. I can't live like this. But for the wide angle lens that is our base coat, we're just going to keep on trucking. Ain't nobody got time for that. So, yeah, that is... Oh, God, I love it. I love it. And it's funny because, like, sometimes I'll get, most of the time I get an idea for an army and it's usually, has something to do with lore or models. Be like, oh, wow, those models are really great. I want to paint those, so I'll do an army around those. Or God, that was such a great, like, you know, Hell's Reach is just such a baller novel, and the Black Templars just come across so just really, really cool, and Grimaldus and everybody. So I'm like, oh, that makes me want to paint Black Templars. Sometimes it'll be just a paint color. It'll be just like this matte blue-gray. Then I'm like, I just want to do an entire Imperial Guard tank company based on this matte blue-gray because it's just so sick. That's probably one of those that I'm going to file under never going to happen. But you never know. I do have some Deathcore Krieg that I get to do on commission. I almost said that I have to do. Yeah, woe is me. I have some Deathcore Krieg to do on commission, and by some I mean a ton. So we'll see. I have to talk to my buddy Chris and see what he wants to do with those. But maybe I can convince him that he really wants. You know, they're kind of a blue-gray scheme, the Deathcore. Maybe I'll just send him pictures. Really does look different than the spray layer. What do you mean different than the spray layer? Gray layer? No, I don't know. Come on. This thing is just being a temperamental. Blue black. Oh yeah. Yeah, it really well, especially like in hindsight, maybe I should have painted on a white background today. But yeah, you really start to see some definition when you get even just the base coat layer down. You really start to see some definition in these models. Because when you're looking at them here, you're like, oh yeah, that looks cool, you know, hazard suit, whatever. But then when you get this gray down, you're really starting to see that shape and that come to life. And then it's going to be even more fun when we go in with the next color, with the rust gray, and start to get some highlights shot on this. It's really like, that's one of my healthy distaste for Tau on the table is well documented and lengthy. I just think they're boring, but I love painting Tau. Painting Tau is super fun. But contrary to what I was just talking about, my love for painting Tau does not extend to me ever wanting to have an army of them. But I'll continue to paint Brian's Tau because I love this scheme and I love painting these models. And Brian's a good dude, very, very, very talented player as well. I've had the opportunity to play, well, that might be overstating it. I've had the opportunity to put my models on the table in front of Brian's army. Not much playing was done after Brian finished his first turn or two. He's just next level. It was one of those like, that does what now? How many shots is that? And I think at a certain point, I sat there with a calculator, and I think it's took like a couple hundred shots in one turn, and it was just like, cool. I'll just pack up now. So Tau, not my favorite army to play, not my favorite army to play against, but I love painting them because it just it lends itself really well to my style with the highlighting and the really bold colors, and it also is like we're gonna airbrush. So we airbrushed the yellow, masked it, then we're gonna airbrush this blue gray, then we're gonna go through and we're gonna highlight the blue gray with the airbrush and get some really dramatic. Come on, there we go. We're gonna get some really dramatic highlights on the armor, and then like a crisp edge highlight and an oil wash, and they're gonna look great. We'll go through and do the detailing of the undersuit and do all that highlighting, do the metallics, lenses and stuff like that. But as far as effort and result, Power great. Because they don't have, they're pretty much the exact opposite. I'm doing this Space Wolf commission for my friend Julian. And Julian is a Space Wolf player's Space Wolf player's Space Wolf player. I mean, this guy, lovingly converted all his models. Just a ton of character in this army, and it's really cool. But it's trinkets and pelts and gems and ropes and just all the flair, all the Space Wolf flair that you would expect to see. So the Tau are pretty much the opposite of that. There's not a lot of flair in the sculpts themselves. Of course, you can go through and you can add, all the sept markings and battle damage and all that stuff, and that looks fantastic. But as far as just a bog standard sculpt, there's none of that. So it's refreshing. It's very clean to paint. I don't know. Gloves, it's never really been my thing. I don't know why. I'm a very tactile person, I guess. I've found that when I just wash my hands a lot, so like when I'm done here, I'll, people like post, and I've seen comments like, "Oh, you're gonna get hand cancer from acrylic paint being on your hands." I'm like, am I? I don't know if that's like a thing or if that's just Tang will give you cancer. So it's like one of those things where I could pick my battles. I should probably look into it maybe because cancer's bad, but yeah, exactly. Thank you. There's I'm also in the process of trying to quit smoking cigarettes, so that's at the top of my list of things to worry about. Definitely something that trying to get through, but it's tough, So yeah, so I'm gonna work on, maybe after I knock that out, I can worry about the hand cancer from acrylic paint. But I found that when I wear gloves, I kind of lose track of where my hands are on the model, or the paint doesn't dry as fast on the gloves. So if I pick up a model like this, and I have a bad habit of resting my fingers on the model, which most of the time doesn't get me in trouble, but if I'm wearing gloves, it gets me in trouble more. The paint will stay wet or something, and I'll grab a model and I'll just put a fat glob of paint on the side of the model. and just ruin whatever I was working on, which is awful, which is not anything that I want to go through. So, in the scheme of things, what is going on? This is. There we go. So I don't know. I don't think you. Whoops. I don't think you could see that. I don't know if there's a good way to show you what I just did, but kind of one of the quick fixes for there being a clog. I'm gonna try here, but it's gonna be no. That's gonna be too risky. Maybe if you can look in the top cam. So what I did is I'm just holding down for air, and I'll actually loosen the needle in the brush and just pull it in and out, and hopefully clear whatever little clog is in the nozzle, at least temporarily, rather than emptying out. Because I still have, if I didn't have much paint in here, I would just move on, or I would just clean it and then move on. But because I have a good amount of paint in the cup that I don't really want to waste. And you can see now it's spraying much better. Sometimes it's just a little chunk of something or a little clog that is getting in the way. And I'll hold down the air, I'll loosen the needle here, and then I'll just pull it in and out into the spray bottle, into the cup. I'll pull the needle in, out, and out, and out, and out, and that'll sometimes clear that little clog like it did this time, so I got lucky. And then that'll let me keep working before I'm just trying to get through this base coat before having to take this apart and clean it. And I might do, let's see, what time is it? It is, so I have another half hour, so I'll probably do a cleaning. I'll probably soak it between, because I'll be streaming later. But I have to go pick up kids and do dinner and bedtime and all that fun stuff. Then I get to come back and hang out with you fine folks. But I'll probably soak it and then do a quick clean so that it's in good shape for the stream tonight. But that did seem to solve a lot of my issues. Again, if I were doing the highlights, I would have stopped a long time ago and cleaned this airbrush to get a good. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel, a lot of people, it has to be super clean. It has to be, functioning perfectly for, anything to get done. It's just not true. It just has to be able to spray paint on the model. And if it can spray paint on the model and do what you need it to do, then it's functioning just fine. So a lot of people overthink this stuff, and it's too bad because it can prevent people from either working through little hiccups like that, or what I've seen too is people will be really hesitant to even try working with the airbrush because it's intimidating, and it is. I'm not gonna, it is. There's a learning curve. There's a lot that goes wrong. A lot that goes wrong with airbrushing. So figuring out how to adjust and how to head that off at the pass, or how to deal with it when it does happen, is a big, big, big part of learning the airbrush. Because I know guys that, they picked up an airbrush and started airbrushing and then it clogged on them or it was sputtering for 2 or 3 paint sessions, and then they haven't touched an airbrush in like a year and a half because it's just too much of a pain in the ass. Which it is. It is a pain in the ass. But, over time and with practice, you can learn how to mitigate this thing being a pain in the ass to the point where you can get it to do what you need it to do, hopefully without too much effort. There are definitely days when this thing is just a pain, and I'll just switch over to like assembly or something because I'm just like, I'm not dealing with you today. But those kind of on the fly fixes and stuff, I can share with you. So hopefully, if it happens to you, then you can know what to do and avoid trying to figure some of this stuff out on your own. And that's my goal, is to kind of share, not just, hey, look at this really cool thing I did. This is how I did it, but like, wow, my airbrush is being a total pain in my ass today. But we're gonna, you have to maintain that kind of relationship with the airbrush. You can't let the airbrush dictate terms. You have to hold your ground. So he's getting. Oh yeah, white is the devil. White is just awful. I've probably gone through 8 or 9 different airbrush ready whites, and if it's not like, if the airbrush isn't working perfectly and the mix isn't, and it's not a perfectly thinned, and then it's just gonna be sputtering everywhere. And what I've learned, and I'll absolutely be covering white in a few different ways. I have a go-to white that I use that's really good. It's a good cold white that I'll be doing tutorials on, and I'll be using, because I use that a lot. That I'm working on a warm white, kind of tan brown white, because that one's like a typical gray white. So more of a cold white. I'm working on a warm white for, I really want to do a white scars tutorial video. They just got their Codex supplement and they're all the rage right now. Again, funny people like, oh my gosh, white scars are popular again. White scars are popular. Oh yeah, white scar. And I'm like, did none of you play in 7th edition? Because I remember white scars being popular. But then again, they weren't really white. They were, these are my ultramarines these are my blue scars. These are my green scars. It's just traumatic memories. But I do want to do a white scars tutorial on a warm white. And I started to do it, and I just really didn't like how it was turning up. So I have to mess with that recipe a little bit more. And then I have a third white, which is more of like a blue white, and that's what I used on Armin and Magnus, and there's more. Whoa! I just shot a ton of of thinned down blue gray on the side of that gun. I don't know if you can see, there's a lot of paints in there. I'm just going to leave that alone and see what happens when it dries. If I hit that with air, all that paint's going to travel somewhere in spider web. That's not good. It's not terrible because it is super thin. But I'm not going to do my little handy dandy drying trick. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just not even going to touch it. So now I can go back and just kind of look at these. I would say that's too late. You're like 20. What was that? 20 scimitar jet bikes and 2 Xiphons into your white scars. One of the things that I found with white is it does sputter. It's pretty much always going to sputter. 24. That is a lot. That's awesome. I mean, I'm super jealous because that army looks amazing. One of the things that I found with white, and this I'll go over when I do tutorial, is the white's probably going to sputter. But what I did, like with Magnus's cloak or with Armin's robes and stuff, if I'm not getting any sputter on a color or on white or anything, I can usually do base coat, mid-tone, highlight, and like high highlight in one go. And I don't have to go back and do a bunch of glazing and stuff to get it to even out. I could, but again, ain't nobody got time for that. With white, you have to. So like when I do kind of large areas of white and I'll be doing this on Ultramarines Razorbacks, like their turrets are going to be white, and then there'll be like panels and stuff that are white. And I guarantee that'll sputter. And I'm not going to keep. Yeah, exactly. Layering is exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll go back and I'll do the dark gray, medium gray, white, or dark gray, light gray, white. And then I'll go back with a really thin dark gray and do the shadows again. I'll go back with a really thin light gray and do the mid-tone again. I'll go back with a really thin white and do the white again. And I'll work through that progression like 3 times and just thinner each time, because that second coat of the mid should take care of a lot of that sputtering. Like if you go back and do the mid-tone again, it should take care of a lot of the sputtering in the white, and then you can kind of glaze. I've seen people have really good results with white ink, acrylic inks, like the FW inks or the Delarowney inks. I haven't tried it. I'm not dipping too much into inks because I like being able to go back. I like being able to go back and do touch-ups. And I like being able to go back and have a repeatable process. And because inks are so transparent, it makes that really, really difficult to go back and do any kind of adjustments or any kind of touch-ups on. You'd have to build it all the way back up from scratch. So practically, I don't love. I have certain things I use inks for. I think they're fantastic for those applications. Like I do like muzzle burns and stuff like that I do with inks. But for as far as just like a paint scheme, very hesitant to try the white ink, because it could work great, but then if something happens down the road and I have to go back and like repaint an entire model because the ink messed up, I'm not going to be a happy guy. So I try to stick with paint just for consistency's sake. So I dumped all that paint on the side of this, and you can see a little bit, you can see kind of some tide marks on there, some coffee stains on there. I don't know if it's showing up real well on camera, mostly probably because it's out of focus, but you can kind of see some tide marks on there, but not too bad. And again, this is our base coat, so couple more thin layers of this, and it'll be like it never happened. But if we kept trying to attack it, it would have just pushed that paint all around and would have just been an absolute mess. Oof. God, who cleaned these models? It wasn't me. It was me. So, like it never happened. And again, I could have gone back and, whew, just feeling spry. I could have gone back, so I just ended up cutting off a little. That wasn't even like flash that was left behind. That was actually a tab from cutting it off the gate, which I don't know how I missed that, but you know, when you're doing 8 of these at a time, it happens. So that's like, you know, at the back of that arm, there's no primer. I didn't go back and prime that and redo I just cut it off and sprayed it with paint. But because when these are mounted, like the back of that arm is going to be under. Oh, can't even see that. The back of that arm is going to be under the shoulder pad. Nobody's ever going to touch it. You're never going to see it. So it may sound like I'm cutting corner. I kind of am cutting corners, but there's a very practical. Sometimes there's very practical reasons for just saying, you know, it's going to get covered. It's going to look fine. It's not going to affect the paint at all. If it were somewhere else on the model that people were going to touch or that you would grab when you were like picking up the model or something, then I would go back and reprime and redo it, just to get that kind of adhesion. But because it's in an out of the way spot that's underneath a shoulder pad, we just don't want to leave it. Of course, we're not going to leave it resin colored. So just spray with a little paint, call it a day, and move on. Okay. And I think that's going to get us pretty close to 4 o'clock. Oh yeah, this is going to get a nice cleaning between sessions. We have a few more minutes. So I'm not going to do anything with. I wonder how fast we could do that actually. I wonder if we could do a quick. Oh, let's try it. So next color is going to be Rust Gray from GW. And I think I ran out of paint pot or dropper bottles when it came time to do the Rust Gray, so I have to live with these awful little paint pots. I love GW. I love most of what they do in general. I do not love these paint pots, but c'est la vie. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. So okay. So let's see if we can see how much highlighting we can get done in the next like 20 minutes. Oh god, I hate this paint so much. Okay. So for the helmets, we're just going to be doing kind of the top third or so. That makes it look way lighter than it is. That's like much closer to. So we just want to hit kind of that top half or so. What is that? This little hair. So a little lint or something. Tweezers. A piece of paper towel or Kleenex or something. So that's a nice first highlight there. Let's lower this down a little bit. One of the things I like about the Patriot Extreme, and it's not, for some people this is a drawback for the brush, for me I really like it, is this little knob on the bottom. I can adjust, like I can go all the way down, or I can go up with the air pressure. So I can adjust the air pressure on the fly, and for me, I really like that without having to go down and reach down and mess with the pressure on the compressor. Although I know they sell like quick releases and stuff like that that have the pressure regulator on them, or you can get one where the pressure regulator is on the hose. That sounds great too. I just haven't done it yet. I'm one of those. I'm definitely one of those. If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of people in general, and that extends into my hobbying. So, if and when it comes time for me to get a new airbrush setup, I'll certainly look into that. But this works for me, so I'm going to keep doing this with. So that's looking pretty good. Because ultimately, these aren't going to be like super dark gray. These are going to be this kind of really nice medium. Son of a gun. If you see that, you can see that on the front of this helmet is like this paint separating, or God, I don't know why this paint does this, but it drives me absolutely bonkers. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it does. Most of the time it doesn't. Sometimes it does, and it just separates and kind of almost goes into like kind of a cellular pattern or something, and it just makes me insane. But it's been every pot of rust gray that I've tried. Maybe I'll try it again now that they've moved through, I don't know, umpteen million bottles, and maybe it's different now, but I'm locked into the scheme. There's nothing I can do about it. When that happens, I just do a couple another glazes with it, and it evens out. But when it happens unexpectedly, it's definitely those feel bad moments. So I'm going to do a little bit of kind of call it like panel modulation or color modulation, highlighting, where we're going to place highlights, and it's a little different. Like on the Patreon, we talked about with the grayscale Space Marine tutorial. It's going to be a little different, but it's going to be a little different. So we really want this to be light. We want this all to be in shadow down here. And then when we want this to be light, we want this to be light up here. But we want the front part of the leg to be light, front part of the leg here. Yeah, because it's sticking out a little bit. If this were going back, it would be different. We don't have a suit that has that, but and then bottom of the toes, and then top of the shoulder pads here, top of the shoulder pad, and then on these big jetpacks back here, you know, we're gonna do the same like we did on the helmet, kind of the front half or so here. This part of the jetpack is gonna be black, so we're not gonna worry about this part here. But this we're gonna bring back into that light gray. We'd like for that. Remember, when we did the yellow, we stopped that yellow shadow like right around there. This is just water on the brush. We stopped that yellow shadow kind of like right in there. So we want to keep that in mind. We'd like to stop the light gray, dark gray transition right around the same spot, so that it looks like the light's affecting both colors equally, and that'll give us a really nice look. Same thing on here. We took the shadow back up to like really the back of that little rectangle there. So we're gonna want to keep that light gray going up to about the back of that rectangle in the same area, and then it'll look even, and it'll look like it's done on purpose. The thing that I love about airbrushing Tau battle suits is that depending on how you turn the model, you're like spraying straight on the whole time. There's not a lot of additional masking that needs to be done to get a nice crisp line. So we're spraying like straight down on this upper torso area, and then you'll see when we turn it flat, there's a really sharp line of demarcation between that upper torso and that lower armor when you start to get underneath there. Just by nature of how the models are designed and how they're made. And it's just really handy, makes life a lot easier, which is not something you can say for Tau very often. So, you know, they have to pick their spots when it comes to being helpful. And let's see, that's going to be gray too. This is going to be gray too, so we want to hit the front of that, and then we want to go back. And again, we want this to end. We want that transition to be right around the same area that it was for the yellow. Like that. Top of the shoulder there. And now this is a little tricky. We do want to get that top half of that front area. Okay, and then now that I'm looking at it, I don't think that's going to be enough. I think that's going to be too much dark gray looking at it from the front. If we just leave this top part here in light gray, I think that's going to be too much removed from the rest of the torso. So just do a quick little lightening on the knees there, and then we're going to go in and on the bottom half, we're going to try and do just a little hint right there. So we'll do that again, just a little on that square right there, just a little hint. And when you're looking at it, see how that integrated that a lot more? That's what we want. How it's not as stark a transition between the top of the torso and the bottom of the torso, and that's what we want. So we got the top of that, we got that. Toes. Don't forget the toes. And the side of the toes. And then there's that, like, so annoying. And don't forget, I always forget these little back calf armor pieces back here. And I have to go back and It's obnoxious. One of the things, I mean, one of the positives about batch painting is it's harder to miss those things if you're just going through and doing the same thing every time, but you know, there are definite attention span, attention to detail aspects of this that, you know, you really have to pay attention. Or you're going to miss stuff like that, and then we've all had it happen, and you end up having to go back 3 stages later and fix it. So this is the first. This is looking good. I love painting towel. Towel on the table can go die in a fire. But man, so this is just with the airbrush in 2.5 hours, including masking time, that we've got one suit to, you know, here, and we're gonna try and knock out the highlights on the suits. We're gonna stay on a little bit late. Do have a hard end time for going to the bus stop to grab my daughter, but we're on a roll, so I want to and if anybody has any insight as to why the rust gray is doing that, let me know in the comments, because it's like so frustrating. You can see it there, that it just ends up separating. And again, it's like I just do another glaze and it's taken care of. It's not a big deal. Just glaze a couple more layers on there, but there we go. And make sure you get the inside of there, top of there, top of there, top of there. Get that back to where it's matching with the yellow. Shoulder pad, top of the crotch, straight down on the torso, across there, straight down there, little bit on that square, and see when I'm not talking through each. Oh, there we go. There, that was a good one, actually. And I forgot to do a couple highlights on that last one, so we'll go back. So that was a good one. Just painting the back of that. Because it's going to be so dark on the side. That's really going to look. One of the things about panel modulation, and I'll get into that a lot more when we get into painting vehicles and stuff, is you want to keep light panels next to dark. It's a whole thing, but if you look into it, it's a technique that military modelers use when painting tanks and tank panels, and it totally changed how I approached painting vehicles and how I approached painting, dreadnoughts and just anything with big panels and hard edges, and it really just gets an awesome effect. So get that there, that back to there, a little bit down on the side, front of that, there, that down the side, top of the shoulder, back of that, a little bit there. Please get rid of that. Ooh. Okay. No worries. We're good. Keep going. Keep pushing. Top of the torso. Top of the torso. Straight across. Straight across. And that. Oop. Back of the calf. Toes. Toes. Calf. 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 Boom. Oop. We forgot the little square. Little square. Little square. Side. Oh, I forgot that on the other suit. Forgot to do the side of the little chest bump. And I'm always very, very grateful when I remember that before I've cleaned up and put away the color for the day. So even though we're going to be back and we're going to do that final highlight tonight, tonight we're going to do the final highlight on the gray. And then we're going to take the tape off and we're going to get a really good idea of where we're at with the model. That shouldn't take too long. We're going to highlight the guns with the medium gray and then highlight the guns with the medium gray, and then we'll go through and we'll do the last highlight with the light gray and peel the paint. And then still have time. We'll start blocking in. Did it again. Unbelievable. I might have to get a new pot and see what the issue is, but at the same time it just takes a little bit of glazing, and so it's not really a big deal, but it's just more annoying than anything else. What was I gonna say? Oh, so tonight we'll come back and we'll do the light gray, highlight on everything, peel, and then we'll start blocking in the black undersuit. And that's really the step that takes the longest when painting these guys. Basically everything that isn't an armor panel is going to get painted black and edge highlighted. So, and then all the armor panels get edge highlighting. And if it's one army that benefits from crisp edge highlighting more than any other, it's Tau. It's one of the things I like about painting Tau, because I'm sick and I really enjoy edge highlighting, but it's just, it's where the time is spent on this. I mean, obviously we've spent a little time on doing, but yeah, look at that. Pow! We got a nice fade there. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do, that final highlight. We're going to highlight up the guns, the back of the guns. Kind of, and this is like pretty quick because most of the gun's gonna be in shadow, just how it is on the model. So like that's gonna be pretty good. And then we're gonna hit the back because it's gonna be sticking out the back of the model. We're gonna hit the back a little bit and give it a little more, give it some visual interest back there. But that is going to be pretty close to just being it. And we just got to run down all those guns and just knock it out. So, how much paint do I have left? Maybe just do it right now. So we're going late, but sometimes life gives you an opportunity to finish one stage of the batch painting. This is how I end up staying up late painting until like 1:30 in the morning or something. Is I'm like, oh, I'll just finish off this color, or I'll just finish edge highlighting this, or I'll just finish, and then my wife is like, seriously, you need to put the brushes down. And my wife is very, very supportive. I'm very blessed that that my wife is as amazing as she is. Very, very supportive of this endeavor, and has always been very supportive of my hobby in general. But you know, even she has her limits when she just wants to go to sleep, and I'm still painting. So, and one lesson that I've learned in my 7 years of marriage, 6+ years of marriage, is my life is usually easier when I listen to my wife. Whoa! Whoa. What just happened there? See that we're going too fast. I didn't, excuse me, I didn't check my, and this is something I always say to do, and I didn't listen to my own advice there. You always want to test off to the side before you start spraying paint on a model. I mean, that's just super basic, like number one, painting 101. But like everybody, you get in a hurry and you want to finish up and you want to get something done. You kind of get overconfident. You go, oh yeah, that looks right, or then you end up just, hosing. Thankfully, see, like that. Not bad. That looks pretty good. Thankfully, it's just a mid-tone, and it's really watered down. So there's no nothing we're gonna have to go back and correct. We got lucky there because that's not always the case. Sometimes it's something critical. Sometimes it's a color that you really didn't want to hose everywhere. So I don't know why I moved these guys so far up. I got in the way of my painting area here in front of the camera. All right. Well, that's good. We hit our stretch goal, which was getting the first highlight down on the guns and the battle suits. These are starting to look really, really cool. So I'm excited to get back after it this evening. But you're really starting to see this development. I can't wait to get that third stage of highlight on, or the second stage highlight, and get that black lined in. And that's really, really a turning point when it comes to being able to see this all come together. So looking forward to that. We'll be back on later tonight, taking care of that, and probably into tomorrow's Twitch stream. I'm not going to do the same thing every day. I might mix it up tomorrow. Maybe I'll do some Space Wolves or something. I don't know. Let me know what you'd like to see. I don't want to jump around too much because I do have a process, and it's a momentum-based process. So once I start on a squad, I like to finish it. But I don't want to be painting the same thing on Twitch over and over and over again. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go through and we'll see. We'll see how far we get on the stream tonight. I'm definitely be painting these guys tonight. Thank you so much for joining me for this first foray into the Twitch. And if you have any suggestions, comments, either put them in the comments or send me a message or whatever. I'm doing this for you, so I want to know what you want to see and what works and what doesn't work. But I'm going to be streaming a lot, so looking forward to it. Looking forward to hanging out and painting with you. And hope you have a great afternoon, or if it's midnight where you are, sleep well. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.